Welcome to the Rotowire DFS podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hayes, joined as always by Benny Ricciardi as we break down the Friday NBA DFS slate. You can find Benny on Twitter at BennyR11 and over at RotoCurve, Rotowire, and as a featured writer in the DraftKings playbook. And you can also follow me on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. The Rotowire DFS podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher, so if you get a chance to rate, review us, please go ahead and do so. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Benicio, welcome to another day that actually has a full slate in the National Basketball Association.
Yeah, a lot to talk about today. 14 games on tap for Friday to welcome everybody back. So this is, this is one of those days that I think is going to be a good day where you can kind of go a little chalky, even in GPPs, because with so many options, I don't think you're going to get too high of an ownership rate on anybody.
All right, very interesting and well said. You know what? I was just sort of thinking about this here. I feel a little bit underdressed for the show. I didn't know there was a dress code. I'm the producer of the show. How am I supposed to, you know what I mean? And you're going to show up here on Google Hangouts in a tie and a button up and I don't know what you got. You got a smoking jacket over the tie and the collar. I'm just saying, I'm not really happy about the communication that's happening here in the DFS department for Rotowire.com, and I'm heavily involved in the production, the protocols or whatnot for this show. You care to explain what's going on here?
Yeah, I actually have a video that I have to do after this that I usually wear a shirt and tie for. So I'm a busy man and I'm multitasking right now. So I figured this way I don't have to go and get changed again after. So,
well, let it be known that the show that will air first will be this one. So, as it turns out, you just happen to also be dressed for that show as well. That's the way I'm going to take it. You were originally dressed for one of the best DFS shows in the business, and that's the Rotowire DFS live stream, video, YouTube channel, and podcast. For those of you listening in audio format, Benny is very well dressed. I look like I got some Cheetos on my shoulder here, that isn't wiping off. But, for the good news is podcast people, unless, if I didn't mention it, would have never known the difference. So there you have it. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We've got a few more games than we had for the Thursday slate. So that's also some interesting information. As we mentioned yesterday, and I would be remiss if I didn't sort of emphasize this, the Rotowire DFS podcast is now brought to you by the proud sponsor, FanDuel.com, the leader in one-day fantasy sports. So make sure you check them out here. And they've been nice enough in terms of Adam Silver and the NBA to provide us with 28 teams to choose from here on this Friday slate for FanDuel. So let's go ahead and kick it off the point guard position and talk about your top options here for FanDuel pricing in cash games and GPPs.
Yeah, I think the guy that I'm going to first is Damian Lillard. He's going up against the Golden State Warriors, which isn't an easy matchup, but he had 63 against them earlier this year. Last season, he had 49 against them, so he's putting up some big numbers when he goes against Golden State. We know Golden State plays high-scoring games. The pace is up. Whenever Portland is scoring, you know that Lillard's usually involved. So he's actually the guy I've been coming down to. The reason for that is, Westbrook's getting really expensive right now. And yes, he does have the upside for tournaments, but for cash games, I don't know if I want to pay up $11K for him in this matchup. John Wall's on the tail end of a back-to-back. John Wall, if you look over the back-to-backs that they've had in the last month or two, he's underperformed in most of the tail ends with the exception of the Boston game. So I'm a little nervous about using him on the tail end. Curry, again, I like Lillard to have, pretty close to the same amount of points as Steph Curry does, especially over on FanDuel. And I think you're getting such a discount on him that it's better to come down to Lillard there. And then Kyle Lowry, I'm still a little nervous with the wrist. So, he's somebody not really on my radar. And then the last guy is Rajon Rondo, who's been putting up some really big numbers lately. Matchup with Denver, I kind of like him as well. So for me at the top end, it's basically Damian Lillard and maybe a little bit of Rajon Rondo in tournaments.
Yeah, I love the call for Rajon Rondo. Definitely want to attack Emmanuel Mudiay and Denver defense. That should be one of the higher totals on the board for Friday night action there as well. I haven't bookmarked. I'm still not really opposed at all to at least rolling Russell Westbrook somewhere. I know the price is very cost prohibitive. He's up, at 11K last time we were able to roster him on FanDuel on January 11th. But literally a double machine, and I think he's like fairly safe for cash games. And the good news is because we have 28 teams and 14 games in action, you can really actually make a case for paying the 11K and finding the value pricing around that at the other positions to sort of make it work out for your cash game. I don't know we really actually need close to 70 point upside, 65-ish point upside to really sort of look for GPP value. So, I don't know if you can really consider him a GPP play or a good one at that. But for cash games, we're talking about the floor just basically starting in the 50-point range there as well, which, is, and if you can get to, 50, 55, 58, then I think we're going to talk about 5x value. And if he misses 5x value, you have to consider this a lock for 46 to 50 fantasy points to start out at the point guard position, which is always very nice for a cash games, provided you don't stretch yourself too thin with a minimum price guy that you don't feel great about. But I think that because we have all hands on deck, you can make a case for working around one top price guy like Russell Westbrook for Friday. Are you okay with that notion?
Yeah, like I said, on a big slate like this with so many other options, I feel like I don't have to go so much with the stars all the time. If this was like a 5 or 6 game slate, it's a lot tougher to fade a guy like Russell Westbrook who has that kind of upside. But on a bigger slate, I think you can get away with it a lot easier. So, you can come down to guys like Lillard, Rondo. Like I said, I even like Drew Holiday a lot in this spot. His price is a little bit cheaper than those guys. He's like a little bit above 7K. He's been the last week or so. Going up against Philly, a little bit of a revenge factor for him. And we know that Philly's one of those teams that just gives up a ton of points to everybody. So with all the problems and the injuries going on in New Orleans, Holiday's going to get a lot of minutes. He's another guy that I'd be looking at in that range. I think you can save a little more at point guard and still get some big upside. And there's some other positions that I want to pay up at today.
Yeah, I could see the case being made for that there as well. I see just like, what I'm going to see here in every single spot is a guy that I have no problem dropping down to at a value spot to pair with every expensive guy. So it's almost like you can go stars and scrubs with your two guards, your 2 point guards, your 2 shooting guards, and still feel like I'm going to create a combination of fair value and have the second guy provide me, a little bit of, value to extract. For example, Patrick Beverley, who has been sitting in the 46 range here for the last week or so on FanDuel. Great matchup at Phoenix there. Probably a good bet for 20 to 25 points and does have 30-point upside going against Archie Goodwin, who also isn't a bad play himself in this spot there. And then so if I take my 50 from Russell Westbrook and my 25 from Patrick Beverley, there's my 75 points between the two guys. And, Bev can get you into the 30-point range, which he's dipped into a few times this season, and is in a plus matchup against one of the worst Phoenix teams. Maybe I'm just talking about more. Maybe this sounds like it's better for GPP construction, but I think I actually feel pretty good about my 75.4 between the two guards and the price tag, the cumulative price tag that I'm paying, which is what 15.5, 15.6 overall, which is essentially the same as paying 7,800 a player. So if you feel like you can get you can take your 7,800 and get into the middle tier and come out with something better than 75 a 75-point floor, then you know which direction you should go in, and that's certainly possible too. I love Drew Holiday against Philly. I like Rajon Rondo against Denver, and you can come up with some sort of combo of those guys. And maybe you feel like you have something with a little bit more upside and safety cash games. I think I would prefer personally, and maybe this is just a complete difference of opinion for roster construction, of a Westbrook Bev combo to sort of see how it goes. But you know what? We'll have to sort of try a couple different things and see how it ends up shaking out. We can move forward from point guard, unless there's anybody else you want to talk about onto and jump into the shooting guard position if you are ready, sir. You let me know.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not much at the low end that I'm really looking at. I mean, maybe if Reggie Jackson misses the game, I guess with no Brandon Jennings now, would Steve Blake be their backup?
Yeah, I guess that would be reasonable to say, but I'm not ready to go full Steve Blake mode just yet.
Well, I mean, if Reggie Jackson's out, they said he missed the last game before the All-Star break with an illness, and they said he's questionable still for tomorrow. So if he happens to be out still, I would guess that Steve Blake has to play 30 minutes now.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I just, maybe it's just my personal aversion to Steve Blake. I just never seen him as reminds me of Patty Mills when Tony Parker is out. Like, the guy's going to get minutes but not enough of a consistent scorer or a 10 assist distributor for him to be a consistent factor overall. So that is the
other than that, there's not much down there that I'm even looking at. So
yeah. All right, so I'm going to draw the line there and move forward to the shooting guard position. So let's go ahead and talk about who you like at the 2 for Friday.
Well, I don't know what the price is going to be now that the trade was made, if they're going to adjust it. But if Evan Fournier stays at the $5,000 he was at last game, I think he's pretty much locked into one of your shooting guard spots on FanDuel. Now that Tobias Harris has been shipped out of town, you got to figure that, part of the reason they did that was to get more minutes for Fournier. So if he's going to be playing 30-plus minutes, you got to think at $5K, he's definitely one of the guys you got to lock in, no?
I definitely agree with you there as well. My question for you here is, which direction do you want to go? Because there's a lot of I don't know, I can make a case for 4, 5, 6 mid-range guys that could all make a ton of sense overall. And I think that this is going to be one of those lineups, one of those days too, where you really need to sort of separate your cash and your GPP lineups because you have a plethora of options. I almost feel like there's too many options on the slate, to be honest with you, because I like Devin Booker at Houston for value. I like James Harden up top as well on the road at Phoenix. CJ McCollum can get into shootout mode against the Golden State Warriors. He's a mid-value player that makes some sense. Will Barton against Sacramento is interesting to me, and Sacramento has a lot of moving pieces too here as well. One thing we also need to make note of there is what you'll need to do is keep some tabs on the traded players that if and when teams do pull the trigger here on Friday, because a lot of teams will end up having scratches in their lineup for regular starters that are normally made because they have to pass a physical or they have to travel, between now and then. So people that we normally think would be in the starting lineup, if there's any sort of trade from one of the two, you can't just automatically assume. Like for instance, Tobias Harris on Friday's action, they have. I mean, he should be in town and be ready and active to go, I'm assuming. But for whatever reason, Stan Van Gundy mentioned he was coming off the bench. And so, for anybody who's an actual traded player in the outset, I think I'm going to be avoiding altogether, even if he does make it in town in time for the game on Friday. Are you in agreement with me on that fact?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces over the next 2 days. If you played last year or years past, if you played any NBA DFS, you got to know that, when you're putting the rosters together over the next day or two, if there's guys playing in the late game that there's even a chance or that you hear their names on a trading block and stuff like that, you really got to be cautious, because there were a couple deals that I remember going down last year. And I think they were announced a little bit after lock or something like that, where people got caught with guys who didn't play because they were getting traded. And, it can turn into a mess over these next couple days. So just be careful when you're putting the rosters together, because you never know how it's going to go. But another thing that we got to start looking at is rotations going forward in the second half. That's why I said, with a guy like Fournier, you got to assume that he's going to be the beneficiary of that trade that just happened in Orlando. There'll be a couple more trades over the next day or two. So, you got to kind of keep an eye on those teams and see how the minutes start working out, because you can still find some of these guys that, stepped into a bigger role now that are still priced as a, 4,200, 4,400 guy that was only getting 18 or 20 minutes. And now they might be getting 25 to 35 minutes, and, you can get a lot of upside out of that. So definitely pay attention to it early on here. But I agree with you. Other than Fournier, I mean, I like Harden a lot in that matchup against Phoenix. Phoenix plays almost no defense. You're more worried about a blowout slowing Harden down than you are about the Phoenix defense slowing him down. I also like coming down, though. I'm still a big fan of Nick Batum. Milwaukee, even though you would think that they would have a pretty good wing defense, really hasn't been. Guys have been doing pretty well at the small forward and shooting guard spot against them. So I like Nick Batum here. He's been contributing across the board, getting a lot of rebounds. The guy can rack up some assists. He always scores his points. He's long and athletic, so he adds some defensive stats for you. So Batum's a guy that I like if his price stays in that 7K range. I was looking at him in Middleton, but I think I like Batum more than I like Middleton. And you get a couple $100 in savings there as well. So that would be the way I would go if I stayed up top. And then if I went down, like I said, the other guy I was looking at is the guy you mentioned, in Devin Booker. I think it's a pretty good spot for him. Anytime we got somebody going up opposite Harden, they're always going to be able to score some points. So, guys like Booker and Fournier are probably going to be how I roll at the shooting guard spot. And then if I do pay up, it's going to be for like a Batum or a Harden.
All right, I think that's fine, and that makes sense to me overall. So, the one thing I'm sort of gonna do to that I want to sort of take note of here is stay safe with a lot of the group that you were talking about here in the top tier, because you can actually still even find value pricing amongst this group that are like priced in the top 10, like Victor Oladipo. For example, to me, which I think a lot of people are going to probably be off because he's been sitting in the 6,500 range and hasn't been producing 5x, but with at least for GPP's upside has the ability to pop up with a 55-point game and pay off 9x like he did in that matchup on the road against OKC, which we wouldn't have normally expected there as well. And I agree with the same sort of sentiment with Evan Fournier. I even don't mind like as a home run play like Mario Hezonja as well. So I'll be keeping tabs on that. And then another guy that we were using quite regularly on shorter slates, Etuan Moore. For the Chicago Bulls. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Butler is not ready to come back just yet here. And Etuan Moore still value priced at the 4,200 range as of January 10th pricing. And, only really needs to get into the 20-point area plus for him to sort of pay off that price tag. And we saw what he did against Sacramento, produced 39 fantasy points, which was at that time 10x, which would probably be something like 8.5 or 9x now given the price, but still a lot of upside for a bargain basement value. So left definitely a couple different ways you can go in terms of roster construction. And I'm going to be definitely targeting Etuan Moore game in and game out, especially if they're going to move some more pieces, like if Pau Gasol ends up getting traded between now and the deadline. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out. Before we move forward to the small forward position, I got to let you know that the Rotowire 10-day free trial is still going on, still available. If you like the advice of our podcast, you're going to love the website. So don't forget to try it for free at rotowire.com/pod. Features include lineup optimizers for all the major sites, for 8 different sites, including FanDuel, obviously, which has got the pricing that we are locked in and focusing on for this entire show, and the DFS, all the DFS shows going forward. We've got NBA optimizers, NHL optimizers, college basketball, golf, soccer, and with Major League Baseball upcoming. So if you like playing on FanDuel and you're looking for the best information for DFS projection wise, for lineup optimizers, for value reports, and the like, make sure you check out the 10-day free trial, rotowire.com/pod. All right, let's go ahead and move forward to the small forward position and talk about what you want to do at the 3 for Friday.
Yeah, I'm not really looking to pay up for Durant or Anthony or Paul George. If I was paying up at all, it'd probably be for Kawhi Leonard right now. Leonard's playing a few more minutes, has a great matchup against the LA Lakers. He's back up to like that 32 to 35 minute range, where he had been only seeing like slightly less than 30 in the games beforehand. The last 3 games before the break, he had over 40 fantasy points. So if he can get us over 40 for, 73, 7,500 where he's at right now, we're looking at 5.5, 6x. So Kawhi's probably the guy that I'd pay up for. Coming down from him, I love the spot for Danilo Gallinari here. Going up against Sacramento, fast-paced game. He's a high-usage guy on Denver. He's a scorer for them. We've seen a lot of the high-usage guys go off against Sacramento. So the guys who get the ball in their hands more often than not are usually the guys who have the big games. So Gallinari, I think, is going to be somebody who flies a little bit under the radar, but he could put up a 40, 50 fantasy point score here, and, I wouldn't be surprised about it at all. And, really up at the top end, those are the only 2 guys I'm looking at. Gordon Hayward is a little bit interesting against Boston, playing against his old college coach. He always tries to do well when they have that matchup. But with everybody back that Utah has right now, his numbers have come down a little bit. Favors is taking a little more of that scoring load. Hood's been doing a little more of the scoring. And right before the All-Star break, Hayward missed value in a bunch of games. So I don't know if I really like him, but he would be the only other one that I'd even consider up at the top end.
All right, I think that's fair enough. I like those calls overall. For me, what I'm going to be taking a look at here is whether or not I want to get some exposure to Paul George, and I think I do, because I think it's going to be a trading fire situation here between Kevin Durant and PG-13, who has been flirting with a double-double on FanDuel in the past 4 games prior to this. He came in super hot against the All-Star game. So I think if there's anybody locked and loaded at the small forward position that isn't priced in the KD range right now, I do feel pretty good about what the total is going to be in this game, which should be very high, and the shot volume and production. We're talking about 21-9, 22-8 with 6 assists, and looks like 4 of the past 6 games overall. So the guy has been producing at a very high level. They're right in the mid 40s when he's going good. And so the price has been elevated to 8,700. But I think as long as he's at or below 9K, I will have no problem going all the way to up top with him as my potential cash game play, should I be able to afford him. Down below that, I agree with you on the Gallo call against Sacramento. I think it's going to be something that makes a lot of sense there as well. And I'm not in love with as many value options on this side here that I was here at the point guard and the small forward. I'm sorry, and the shooting guard position here as well. So I think you're safer staying in the Gallo range. If you're looking to extract some value from your small forward position, and stay safe with a reasonable floor for cash games. For GPPs, I'm fine. Rolling the ball out against Robert Covington as well, who had a monster game against Sacramento in his last game out, and has a plus matchup against whoever they decided they want it to be it Alonzo G or whoever New Orleans wants to roll out at the small forward position there as well. Whatever it is, it's going to be a plus matchup, I believe, overall. Covington is a scary player because he's wildly inconsistent, but he's getting the minutes. Overall, played a range of 26 to 34 minutes the last 3 games out, which makes me hate Brett Brown because, should have been, you tell me who's a better small forward or 2 option for Philadelphia right now. I don't think you can name one. So the guy should be a lock for 30 plus minutes, and then we would feel a little bit more safer about his floor. But in the meantime, I think we can at least make a case for him given the matchup in GPPs. Anybody else you want to throw a bone towards at the small forward position before we move on?
Well, I like your Covington call, and the other guy in that range that I was looking at, which pretty much goes along the same lines of everything you said, is a guy that's just getting minutes, is PJ Tucker. So if you got to roll the dice, both of them are the same. They could have a 35, 40-point fantasy game, or they could have a 15-point fantasy game. But they're both getting the minutes. They're both seeing the floor a lot, So those would be the 2 guys that I look at, but I kind of agree with what you said originally. I think you want to pay up a little more, on this day. Gallo's a great option. Kawhi Leonard, I like him a lot. I'd rather have the 2 of those guys than have to come down. Although I do think like the Covington and PJ Tuckers for a tournament make a lot of sense because, they do have the high upside if they do have a good game.
All right, fair enough. All right. So let's go ahead and truck it over to the power forward position and talk about how excited you are to use Brow and Cash against Philadelphia.
I actually don't mind Brow in tournaments, but I am not using Brow and Cash against anybody. It's my New Year's resolution. So far, it has worked out very well for me. So, I mean, it's a personal choice that everybody has to make. If you want to use Anthony Davis, I mean, we joke around because I truly don't use him in cash, but he's not a bad cash game play at all on this day. They're going up against Philly. Philly's defense isn't all that good. He should be able to do whatever he wants. I think his price is actually down below 9K the last couple games. I mean, below 10K the last couple games, right? No, he's still at 10K. He's 10,200, so it's a little bit cheaper. Again, I mean, but here's my argument about why not to use him in cash. His last 4 games, 32, 33, 42, 39. His best game was 4X, so it's not even like he has a safe floor. For me, I'm actually going to be coming down a little bit. I like LaMarcus Aldridge going up against the LA Lakers. Aldridge has had a pretty good floor lately. He's putting up like right around 35 to 40 fantasy points in all his recent games. I also like Favors going up against Boston. We know that Boston is very weak in the interior. It's one of the big problems that they have. Favors doesn't have a ton of upside. I think Aldridge probably has the better upside of the two. But I think Favors has been consistent enough where he's getting you, 35 fantasy points and reaching value. So I like him as well. But then I also like Markieff Morris going up against Houston. It's always a little scary because you never know how the minutes are going to work out. But, it seems like since the coaching change and everything's going on over there, his minutes have been pretty safe. He's been producing pretty well. And we know that all season long, Houston's been a team you've been able to target power forwards against because they don't guard them very well. So I think Markieff Morris, if you're looking to save a little bit of money down there. But then you also have Zach Randolph. We haven't seen exactly how this is going to play out with no Gasol. But, the word on the street is that Randolph's basically going to be used as like a center option on that team. So if that's the case and he's going to see big minutes, he's probably going to put up 30 to 35 fantasy points, which for the price he's been lately would be a good return. So that's, there's a lot of options here, but those are the guys that I'm kind of concentrating on.
I like that call overall. I think that you're well on the right track with Zach Randolph is one of my favorite plays overall. This may sound like it's related to the slam dunk contest, but it's not. I just like Aaron Gordon and what he's done. I think they've, even further done due diligence to clear the decks to make sure he's a consistent 30-minute producer. And we're talking about a double-double threat who's actually been a surprise as an assister there. 10 assists in the past 3 games and 7 blocks with 4 steals overall. So he's like really just stuffing the stat category. Believe it or not, actually has been sprinkling in some trays. I know that you like that from your power forwards. Anytime that you have a chance to rebound, why not rebound and just step out and hit the 3 instead? Are we in agreement here, Benny?
Yep, completely.
You could just see he was like, damn it, Josh. He's always got to be a jerk about.
We're on video right now, so I can't watch people. It's one thing when we're on the radio and people can hear how mad I get. I don't want them to see it in my face, so I'm trying to be good.
Okay, I'm just gonna leave the stretch 4 talk alone and do us all a favor before we get into a 15-minute rant. And we're like,
let's see. Like I don't mind stretch 4s. I mind DeMarcus Cousins as a stretch 4. It's a big difference.
Well, I'm just telling you, seriously speaking, Aaron Gordon really doesn't have much business shooting trays where he's at in his career right now. That doesn't need to be a part of his game, which is why I mentioned it too, because if you're going to talk about DeMarcus Cousins, being a dominant rebounder and all the reasons why he should be in the post, which to me in theory makes sense. Do and don't make sense. You know which side I'm obviously on. Aaron Gordon, really from the same ilk, really shouldn't be out there hanging out at the 3-point line at this point in his career when he's just now got a starting job. So
yeah. Here's the difference between the two of them for me is when Cousins is hanging out at the 3-point line, there's nobody on Sacramento to rebound.
No, that's not true. There's Willie Cauley-Stein is a good rebounder. He's not consistent, but he's a good rebounder.
He's not a threat for me on the inside. But when you have Orlando, you still have Vucevic down there. So even if he's chucking up bad shots, you still have Vucevic down there that can clean up the glass. And you can't have 2 big men in the lane at the same time. So you got to put Gordon somewhere on the floor. So that actually makes sense to me. it doesn't make sense to me when they put Cauley Stein in the post because he's not a threat in the post. He's not somebody that really, you have to worry about stopping inside, which would open up the outside for Cousins. That's the difference between the two of them for me. For me, Cousins in the post makes everybody else kind of have to concentrate on doubling or helping out on him, and that opens up the shooters on the outside. So it's a completely different situation there. Although I agree with you, Aaron Gordon should not be shooting threes.
Yeah, but you know what? If he's going to, then it's something that's he can hang his hat on for additional fantasy value, good or bad. We can have the endless debate about whether or not they would score more fantasy points, doing his job inside or shooting from the outside. But we'll say that information for another day. Regardless of that, I think Aaron Gordon is a smart play because as long as his price is under 6K, which we'll have to obviously wait for Friday pricing on FanDuel to figure it out. I think he's in a good spot against Dallas at the power forward position, which we've always been able to target as a bottom 5, bottom 6 team there as well. I also feel fairly solid about using Paul Millsap if they're going to have no Chris Bosh. For cash games up top there as well. You're going to give me Udonis Haslem, Amari Stoudemire defense there as well. I know Millsap has been a sort of a fairly inconsistent guy after we loved him all season long and just sort of, coming off of that personal issue. I think there was some sort of death in family. His production, you could just tell he wasn't the same player on the court. So hopefully coming off the All-Star game, coming off that big game, 2 games back in Orlando, he can be back on track and be one of our top targets, at least for cash games here, starting with this plus matchup on Friday against the Miami Heat and the Chris Boshless Miami Heat. All right. Anybody else you want to mention at power forward before we move forward?
I mean, there's, do you feel good about any of the other guys around Gordon in that range? Like you have Taj Gibson going up against Toronto, not a great matchup. Marvin Williams, who's been playing well against Milwaukee, which is a pretty decent matchup.
I'm okay with I'm okay with these guys here. But I would much rather play Miles Turner, for example, who people might be off just a little bit because he had a little bit of a bad game there as well. But like I said, this is just all about me getting exposure to Indiana, OKC, and OKC has been playing with ridiculous pace here over the past couple games. And Miles Turner has been at least in terms of minutes, it's been solid 30-minute guy overall, and can be a double threat. And Serge Ibaka hasn't done nearly as an effective job defensively as he has in season past. I don't know if he just doing what you hate, which is which he wants to do, which is hang around the 3-point line a little bit too much when he should be an automatic double, and he's not. But regardless, other teams have been taking advantage, and which is why their DVP is a little bit lower than normal at the power forward position for OKC, which leads me to play Miles Turner, I would say. The rest of the guys in that range, I do like Ryan Anderson against Philly. That's really the only person I would feel fairly comfortable with. Not Taj, like we said, has been a little bit of a disappointment. Marvin Williams, I just don't. It is a good matchup. I just don't trust enough overall. And then the rest of those guys, I think we need to start seeing how the rotation's changing and the minutes shake out with a week's full layoff before I can get more interested in some of the value options down below that. All right. Let's go ahead and put a bow on the power forward position before we move on to center for the Friday slate. What I let all the business owners know that if you need a website, why not do it yourself here with Wix.com? So no matter what business you're in, Wix.com has something for you, used by more than 75 million people worldwide. Wix.com makes it easy to get your website live today. You need to get the word out about your business. It all starts with a stunning website. So with hundreds of designer-made, customizable templates to choose from, the drag and drop editor, there's no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or designer to create something beautiful. You can do it yourself with Wix.com. Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites every single day. So when you're running your own business, you're bound to be busy. Too busy to worrying about the budget, the scheduling appointments, or building a website for your business. And because you're too busy, it has to be easy. And that's where Wix.com comes in. With Wix.com, it's easy and free. Go to Wix.com to create your own website today. The results will be stunning. All right, let's go ahead and talk about your stunners at the center position for the Friday slate, Benny.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why I wasn't as high on Westbrook is I think I'd prefer to pay up for Cousins here over Westbrook today. Okay. You got Cousins going up against Denver, who, basically is a mess with their big guys down low. I mean, I could see like a 25-point, 18-rebound game coming here from Cousins, adding in a couple assists and blocks and steals like he always does. So I have no problem with anybody who prefers to pay up for Westbrook. For me, I prefer to pay up for Cousins, which is why I'm, not as high on Westbrook today. Coming down from Cousins, though, I really like Karl Anthony Towns going up against Memphis. I know people are going to say, oh, well, this is Memphis and their slow pace and their good defense. And all that has to do with Marc Gasol, who's not there anymore. So you're now looking at a team that's probably going to be rolling out like Zach Randolph at center, which means you're probably going to get maybe Jeff Green at power forward. So you're going to have Karl Anthony Towns in a matchup with Jeff Green, and he's going to absolutely kill him on the other end of the floor. So, I really like this situation for Towns. He's been putting up, couple 50-point fantasy games in his last 3 or 4. I mean, this guy is legitimately an elite player in the league right now, and they're giving him the minutes to be able to do so with, Garnett and Pekovic and everybody banged up. So of all these guys below Cousins that I would come down to, I think Karl Anthony Towns is probably the top one. And then from there, if I was going down even cheaper, Jahlil Okafor, I think, is in a great spot going up against New Orleans. New Orleans has been horrible all year against the center position. Okafor is down to 6,400. He's put up some big numbers lately. We know he always scores. Scoring is never a problem with him. If he starts rebounding at even a decent clip for a big guy his size, like 7 or 8 a game, he's going to be putting up huge fantasy scores because he's getting you 20 to 25 real-life points every game there. And at only 6K, if you're telling me I can get 30 to 30-point floor at an Okafor with a 50-point upside, for 6,400, there's going to be a lot of Okafor lineups that I make, especially in tournaments.
I think those are very good calls. Overall, I'm in agreement with pretty much all of them. One thing I want to say here is Al Horford. We know that people need to remember that Hassan Whiteside has a 1-game suspension that he'll be serving on Friday. With no Chris Bosh, we're looking at a front line that could be Udonis Haslem and Amari Stoudemire. So on the flip side of that, for power forward, if you want to use Amari Stoudemire for value, I'm okay with that. I think we've made a case for better options for you as it is. But, if that's going to be the defensive set that Al Horford faces, I love him facing that, B team, at least for cash games in the low 7K range overall. I think it's a good shot for him to, be at 20-plus points. The one thing I have a problem with Al Horford is I wish that he was more of a consistent double-double guy than he is. For whatever reason, he just sits there in the 7 rebounds per game range and decides to give you more value in terms of assists. And it's been actually a little bit more better of a shot blocker this season in seasons past, but I just wish he rebounded more as a center. He's like the prototypical person who's out on the wing a little bit too much for me for the center position. He's a great shooter, and he's actually is probably averaging about a 1 made 3 per game, but I think it's actually at the detriment of their rebounding overall for that team. That was one situation where I'm in agreement for a guy who actually strokes it well as a stretch 5. There, I feel like the reverse is true for him. As a maybe net negative. Because he's out on the wing a little bit too much. Because there's not another guy like you said. Paul Millsap is a nice rebounder, but he's not a monster 15-plus rebound guy. So I just think like the overall construction makes less sense for Atlanta and what Al Horford brings to the table than it does in different situations like DeMarcus Cousins, who has Willie Cauley-Stein. Willie Cauley-Stein's only job really is to sit there on the glass. How consistent he is in terms of getting into the 10-plus rebounding range is a separate issue for him. I know it is an issue, but both Paul Millsap and Al Horford want to live on the outside a little bit too much for me, which is the issue that I have. It makes it sound like I'm not happy with Al Horford as a play because I started immediately hating on him after I recommended him. But rest assured, given the 2 starters out of the lineup, I'm probably going to try to get some exposure to Al Horford for Friday. I just wanted to give you my rant for whatever reason, which is unnecessary. So I apologize to everybody.
No, you know what I like about that rant, though? What I like about that rant is it almost sounds like you're starting to come over to the line of reasoning I use with Cousins. No. Yeah, to the reasoning I use with Cousins, I think. So I like that. I'm working on you. By the end of the season, you're going to be ranting about Cousins. I'm telling you.
I'm not going to be the Kylo Ren of the stretch 4s or 5 just yet. Not joining the dark side, Benny. Okay? My lightsaber is still green for right now. So I'm with you on that. There's a little dark side-ish in me when we talk about Al Horford. and his stretch fiveness paired together with Millsap. But I'm with the Force the rest of the way in terms of DeMarcus Cousins and the other guys who make it rain. Although I went dark side twice, Aaron Gordon and Al Horford, so maybe I need to reconsider whether or not I am with the evil empire. I feel a little bit disgusted with myself personally. So
that's it.
Yeah.
The all-star. I'm just smiling. You're right. That's it.
On Benny's face, he was like, "Yep, yep." You're talking to the coach here, and one person's a coach. One of these two duo members is a coach. All right, that's his job, and the other person is finally starting to realize this. 5 months into the NBA season, so only take
it's fun. It's fun to watch big guys shoot threes, but it doesn't translate into wins. That's the problem. Doesn't translate into wins.
All right. I don't know. What are you trying to tell me that the Sacramento Kings aren't coming out of the West? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs in the West.
Right now, they're on the outside looking in. So just wait till they trade for Pau Gasol or who else were they rumored to be trading for?
Al Horford.
Oh, yeah. Al Horford is one of those players, too, there as well. All right. Time for us to go. It is the wrap for the Friday show for the Rotowire DFS podcast. So don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher and subscribe to the official YouTube channel. Give us some love there. Give us a little thumbs up. Press that subscribe button once you see that link out there for this show. We definitely appreciate that. If you have any comments, complaints, and questions, it's at BennyR11. Don't forget, he loves to I'm just going to say, if you got an issue with some stuff on Twitter, be ready to sword fight with Benny. If he's got some free time, he is not letting go. If you're wrong, he will let you know you're wrong to the death. So if you want to joust, it's at Benny R11. If you want like a one-word answer for your trade question or whether or not you should play somebody in your lineup, it's at Josh Hayes FS. I am much less likely to joust with you and sort of let you have your cake and eat it too. And it's at Rotowire for all your fantasy and season-long NBA and DFS and needs for all sports. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing and checking us out. We'll see you next time.